Good evening. You're very welcome to this week's episode of Centre Ground. And tonight the spotlight is on suicide. But before we begin, the Irish Inquiry are looking for people to volunteer their technical skills. You can go to the Irish Inquiry webpage and there's a drop-down box, Help Us, and you can enter your details there. And it would be most welcome if you could help out the Irish Inquiry if you're able to do videography or editing or any other technical skills that you think might be of help. As I said, the spotlight tonight is on suicide, and my guests are, first of all, Jackie Fox. Jackie suffered bereavement as a result of suicide. She has campaigned for a change in the law on online bullying, and Coco's law will come into law shortly. My next guest then is George Graham. George comes from Wexford. He has represented Ireland 10 times in the World Sheep Shearing Competition, and nowadays he is an advocate for mental health. Breda Gardner is a nurse, and nowadays she practices as a complementary therapist. She has written a number of books, and her most recent book, Healing Words to Help Us Heal, is going to be launched on the 1st of December. In the second half of the programme, our panel discussion, as always, is chaired by Dr. Peter Dunne. And so, to begin, Jackie Fox was bereaved as a result of online bullying of her daughter, and she's going to chat to me now about what happened and how it affected her. You're very welcome to Centre Ground, Jackie.
Thank you, Anna.
Jackie, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to be bereaved?
Yeah, Nicole, my only daughter, my only little girl, there was no problems with her growing up. Everything was fine until she reached the age of 17 and a half, 18. She was targeted by not only online abuse, but physical abuse. And it was through pure jealousy. And that was admitted to me by one of the people that did it. It was out of jealousy. They physically abused her by putting cigarette butts out on her, pulling her down flights of stairs by the hair, dislocating her hip, burning her with a curling tongs, and they weren't happy with that. It went on to online bullying there then, where they constantly told her to, die and hang yourself, kill yourself. Everyone hates you. Constant abuse. They made fake Facebook accounts as well, where they threatened her online with fake pages as well. And it was constant. And from a funny, lively, bubbly girl, she was just a wonderful daughter. It turned into someone that couldn't smile anymore. They stripped her confidence. They tore her down till she couldn't see past another day.
Oh, and then the inevitable happened. Tell me just a little bit about that.
On the day that we found her, myself and my 14-year-old son, I had just collected him from school, and the both of us had walked in the door together. And there in the hallway, Nicole had taken the stepladder and the dog's lead, and she had hung herself from the banisters in the hallway. And I screamed, for my 14-year-old son to take her down. And when we got there, we were only gone an hour. I was only gone an hour, and she was still warm. And I did see PR on her. She had a massive heart attack in the hospital, on the way to the hospital in the ambulance. But being the little fighter that she always was, she died in the ambulance, but they got her heart back again. But when we got to the hospital and they were working on her, and we went in to see the doctor, he said, my my son said, is she going to be okay? And the doctor said, no, she's going to die. She has extensive brain damage and her organs were going to start shutting down. And on the 20th of January, at 5:25 in the morning, we only had 1 minute left with Nicole. I lay on the bed with her in the hospital, and in the final minutes of talking to her, I told her to let go, and I said to her that no one was ever going to hurt you again, that they couldn't touch it again. And I told her I love you, Coco Pops, because that's what I always called her. And yeah, she died at 5:26 then.
Absolutely devastating for you, Jackie. And I know that one of the things that we rarely hear about in the media is the devastating effect that suicide has on loved ones. If you can you just share with us a little bit about the effect that this bereavement had on you and on your family?
I'll try and explain it, but there is no words. The feeling is just, it's totally destroying. It's gut wrenching. It's soul destroying, and it's that longing of wanting to be able to see her smile, to hear her laugh, and it's that longing to get hugs from her, or even for her to say, "I love you, Mum." And it's that crying so hard, and sometimes that you can't breathe, that you're not able to breathe because you're crying that hard, that I've often have to ring a close friend or family, and just to try and calm that down. It's the tension and the tightness in your chest where you think you can't breathe. It's that constant heavy weight, that heavy cement block that you carry around on your head all the time. It's the birthdays, it's the anniversaries, it's Christmas. Christmas was Nicole's favorite time. It's the events that come up where she's not going to be there anymore. I never go out. I haven't. Nicole died 2 years and 10 months ago, and I've never went out to a pub or a christening or a family event, anything at all, because she's not there. She's not there to come with me. And I feel that what gives me the right to, at the moment, I feel what gives me the right to go out. I feel so guilty if I went out and actually laughed or enjoyed myself because of the horrible, sad, heartbreaking way that Nicole died. I feel that why should I be able to enjoy myself? It's the known that I'll never see Nicole get married or, get her first car or go on a holiday abroad. It's known that when she ever has kids, I'll never be a nanny to her kids. It's very hard seeing people go on with their lives, and a lot of people have are having kids, or are going away and they're putting it up on Facebook, and you're seeing everyone moving on, and I feel that I can't I don't have that with Nicole anymore. It's a song that you hear, it's a smell that you smell, it's just a single thought that you think you're doing okay one day, and then a song will come on, or anything, or a thought would come into your head, and I understand what they say now. It's like a tsunami that just washes right over you and just knocks you back to square one. It's the rippling effect as well. It's not only what it's done to myself and her two brothers. She adored her nanny and granddad, and they adored her. It's our aunties, our cousins, our uncles. It's the whole family that are left devastated with the with Nicole not being here anymore. It's your worst nightmare that you're never going to wake up from until until the day that I see her again. And it's a new life. It's a life that no one wants to be in, it that no one wants to live. And it's trying to adjust to our not being here anymore. And you know, this doesn't come with instructions. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yes.
you're learning how to, not how to go on. You're learning how to survive every day, and a lot of the days it is just day by day or minute by minute if you have to, you know.
And I suppose that takes me to my next point, Jackie. I know that there are many support groups to help different types of people who have been bereaved, such as people that have been bereaved by car crashes, for example. Is there any support for people who have been bereaved as a result of suicide?
Yeah, 100%. I've been in a group called Hug, HUGG, and that's Healing Untold Grief Group. And that's a group for people who have lost a loved one through suicide only. Hug was founded by Fiona Toomey, who also lost her beautiful daughter Millie, and by Carol Milton, who lost her beautiful son Alan. Carol is a facilitator in the Hug group, and to be honest, I wouldn't be where I am today without the group. It's just so full. Everyone in the group understands what you're going through. You know, when I first went there, I actually thought I was going mad. But when you listen to a group of people instead of a one-on-one, when you listen to a group of people going through the same feelings, the same anger, the same the same things that you're going through, these people understand. And the group is full of empathy and compassion. The advice is great in it because people would be ahead of me. Do you know what I mean? And you know that you're going to have like inquests and stuff. And some of the people have already been through that. So it's learning of what's going to be ahead of you as well. And, you know, the love in the group is incredible. And at the moment, I'm training to be a facilitator for a Hug group. And I'm going to be opening up a Hug group in Wexford or Waterford. You know, and we have a few Hug groups around at the moment. But there's a lot of people training at the moment, so we're trying to get one in every county in Ireland as best we can. You know, because it's such a needed group. It's such a needed group.
It certainly is. And anybody who is seeking information on Hug can go to hug.ie. And if you just Google it, you'll find it easily.
And it's free it's free of charge as well. There's no fee. It's all voluntary. You know, so there's no charge for it as well.
Yes. I suppose, Jackie, to end, if there's any glimmer of hope in this incredibly, incredibly heartbreaking story that you have shared with us, is the fact that you have campaigned to get the law changed around online bullying, and you have been successful. So maybe you might just tell me a little bit about Coco's law.
Yeah, and I was shocked to find out that there was no law surrounding online bullying, that it wasn't a criminal offence for anyone to torment or torture anyone online. I've been campaigning for the last 2 years and 9 months, and now in the law, it will be a criminal offence to torture someone online. Also, there's 6 or 7 other laws that's going to be in Coco's law. It will be named Coco's law after Nicole, which it's a huge legacy for such a little person that she was. Everything is finalised. All the amendments are put together. Nobody is opposing it. It's all ready for approval. And I got an email there yesterday or the day before. It's going up against the joint committee on the 4th of December. And I was assured that every stage from then will be passed before Christmas. So it will be an online a criminal offence to bully people, and it will be passed, and it will be called Coco's law after. So it's something, you know, it's something for her.
Yes, it's a glimmer of hope. I think people that are watching in tonight cannot but be heartbroken listening to your story about the loss of your beloved daughter, Nicole. And I want to thank you most sincerely for sharing your story with us. I suppose you are giving all of us who have been bereaved by suicide a glimmer of hope. And thank you so much. And we'll be coming back to you later on in the programme.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you.
My next guest is a farmer from County Wexford. George Redmond has several All-Ireland titles in sheep shearing, and he has represented Ireland no less than 10 times at the World Sheep Shearing Competition. Nowadays, and he's going to chat to me now a little bit about this. You're very welcome to Centre Ground, George.
Thank you very much, Anna. George Graham here from Wexford. Yes, I suppose I lived a normal life like most other people, but probably 12, 14 years ago, I was in really bad form for a long time, didn't really know what was wrong with me, didn't understand this, just bad form, but certainly not talking to anybody. It wasn't like I had a pain or I had this invisible pain that nobody else could see, but no talking, no anything. So I was like a person in a great big room. You look into a corner, you look left, you look right, you look up, you look down. There's nowhere you can go. You can't go up to the ceiling, down to the floor, to the wall at each side of you. If you wanted the lucky ones and can take a step back and go to the other corner, you do the very same thing. You look left, you look right, you look up, and you look down, and you find yourself in the same dark place. You can go nowhere. So I found myself in that dark corner. After going with this, no talking to friends, family, nobody knew about it, and covering up my tracks all the time that nobody would know, I eventually decided to run away from the problem. And then I decided to fly away from the problem, but I didn't succeed. As you have already mentioned, in my sheep shearing, I have worked in every one of the 32 counties of Ireland and 30 in different countries. So at this time, I was actually due to go work in Norway, which is the end of October, early November. Not a nice place to go in the north of Norway, a lovely country, but you've almost darkness there for 24 hours. So I found myself up there, and even though I was going, my body was telling me not to go, but my head told me to go, something I should have never done. I worked for about 25 farmers up there, great people, living as one of the family, and you're well looked after. But I found myself up there not eating properly, practically not eating at all, and certainly not sleeping properly. And the only thing in my head 24/7, and I couldn't get it out of my head, was that I wanted to end my own life. Now, everybody doesn't be that way if they have mental health problems or this type of thing, but that's the way I ended up. I mean, my mind was doing 100 miles an hour. I couldn't stop it. Think this, think that, think the other, no matter what it was, seconds. I had no control of it. But I could not get it out of my head. Night or day, I could sit in the middle of shearing sheep. And the good thing for me, I suppose, when I was shearing, I didn't have to talk to the sheep, so I didn't have to talk to anybody. But this particular day, I was out there and I was working for this couple, the farmer and his wife. His wife was actually a psychiatric nurse, and she happened to be doing the wool in the shed. Now, in that particular building that day, there's a kind of a warm room on the shed where we're working, and there was a lot of things in it. But I did find a firearm in that particular building that day. Nobody knew that I had found it. It was there, but I didn't find any ammunition to go in. If I had, I don't think I'd be talking to you here tonight. But anyway, I didn't find that. But I took in that shed that day, which in my opinion is the hardest thing anybody will ever do with this problem. I took what I describe as the first step. And there is nobody, no matter who you are, can take step 2 before you take step 1. Now, when I talk about the first step, it means maybe picking up the phone, talking to a friend. If you're able, and talk to a member of your family, ideally, but I think that's a very difficult thing to do, or going to a GP or going to look for help. But my way of taking my first step was slightly different. I decided to ask this nurse, so I've got a new customer 3 or 4 miles down the road. I don't think they have a lot of English. Could you help me with some translation? And her answer was, yes, sure, there's no problem. Just ring me or call anytime you want. But if I was being honest with that lady, which I wasn't, that wasn't what I was saying to her at all. I was wanted to say to her what I couldn't say. I'm in the depths of despair, would you help me? But I couldn't say that. But that was still my first step. And that gave me a little bit of a glimmer of hope that if in my darkest moments, I always could call that person. So that's where I ended up. Now, I did make up my mind at that stage, if I got out of Norway in the one piece, that I would look for help. And that was an absolute nightmare. I still had 2.5 or 3 weeks work to do after that. And it was the same thing every day. But nobody knew, nobody caught on. And people that would have worked there for years and would have known me very well. When I was finished work, you generally go to bed quite early at night, so you don't have to talk to anybody, but you're going to bed, not sleep, and just thinking, panic, anxiety, these things, all these things were there 24/7, would not go away. So it was an absolute nightmare of one of the worst and cruelest pains you ever could be in that nobody else can see. So that's where I found myself. But that was my first start off. But the big thing was probably not really understanding what was wrong with me, not knowing what was wrong with me, and asking her, why me? Why does it happen to somebody else but it's me? So I found myself in that situation.
Okay, George. And what was the breakthrough for you eventually?
Well, I suppose that was the start of my breakthrough, was there taking that first step. So now I had to get myself out of Norway, fly from Kirkenes up in the very north, right up the Russian border down to Oslo, staying there overnight, getting on that plane that was absolutely desperate, into the seat, anxiety, panic. Before the doors had closed, will I just go crazy, try to read something, trying to choose something to get their mind off it? Will I just jump up and run away, get out of here? Went through all that. Once the plane takes off, it's not as bad. Down to Oslo, stayed overnight. I had a place that I could stay down there, went out on a bus and stayed there, but it's the same thing, no sleeping, no eating. Come back in there the next morning about 8 o'clock, and I was flying out at 11. But I went in and out of that airport probably 20 times before I went to security that morning. And the main reason I did was to find somewhere to end my own life sooner than go to security and face up to getting on that plane and coming back to Ireland. But obviously I'd done that, got back to Ireland. And now I did plan one more big fly away from the problem. And that next one was a much longer one. And that was the outback to Western Australia, a place where I worked quite a bit. I did plan on taking a trip there to end my life there. So I obviously didn't do that. After 3 or 4 days, I did sort of promise and do what I committed that I would do, look for help when I come home. And I went to my local GPs, or family GPs. I would have known quite well, but the man I wanted wasn't there. And when you're in that frame of mind, any little thing puts a damper on you. But his brother was there, extremely good, and I went to him. Very quickly, I was diagnosed with depression, and because I couldn't sleep and that, I was given very mild sleeping tablets as well, and I was put on medication. That doesn't mean everybody needs medication, but that's where I ended up at that stage. I remember then being home one night on my own, about 11:30 one night. I put the mildest sleeping tablet you could get in 2. I probably put in 45 minutes looking at that. Will I take it? Will I not take it? That was the frame of mind I was in. And eventually I did. Once I did, I thought I was going to die, something I wanted to do anyway. So that's the way the mind works in complete reverse psychology. I then went to counsellors. It's a matter of choice. And when you go to a counsellor, maybe not be the counsellor or yourself, you may not bond, you mightn't get on, but then you have to pick yourself up to go on somewhere else. That can be very, very difficult. But anyway, I done all that. I went to clergy. That's totally a matter of choice. Everybody has different beliefs, different opinions. I often went into a church of a dark, cold winter's evening, could put in 5-10 minutes in there in the back of a church on my own. That often got me from A to B. I put in many, many hours sitting in my own Jeep at the back of my own house. I had planned exactly what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. But all the time I was there, I would have the phone up right to my ear, and if anybody come, I was on the phone. So you actually burn up all your energy and eat yourself away trying to cover your tracks. But that was the situation I was in. Now, that same time, I had a daughter that had started in Maynooth. Actually, it was that same year, and just tells you the frame of mind you can be in. And we talk about students and talking about parents and different things, how it can work. But I found myself, of a Sunday evening, I would set myself up that I would bring her to meet a bus about 10 miles away. Now, she had brothers, sisters, and plenty of friends that would do it. I know it was my duty as well. The main reason I wanted to bring her back to that bus every Sunday evening, I was 100% sure when I'd say goodbye to her and that bus took off, that would be the last time I would ever see her. That I would have ended my life before she come back the next weekend. That's the frame of mind, the way I was in. That's what I was thinking. I couldn't get that out of my head. Couldn't change these things. Couldn't stop it happening. People would ask you, well, you're busy. How would you get time to be like that? Sometimes you actually try to cover up with more work. all these things, just a horrible situation to be in. I suppose the best way I could describe it is going through a long, dark, narrow, twisty tunnel. I don't like using the word impossible, but I would say it's quite difficult to get through that on your own. And you do need help when it gets very steep to give you a bit of a push on, or to get you around some of those narrow, twisty bends that are there. But if you can keep going, which is a very, very hard thing to do, there is a light there, and that light will get brighter and brighter. So I found myself in that situation. It's absolutely horrific. But when this is all going on, whatever you're in, and remember, it can happen to anybody from any walk of life at any time. It can be someone like me with nobody, with no money. It can be somebody with money. Money doesn't make any difference when it comes to that situation. So I found myself there, and that's where I was. I'm one of the fortunate ones that have got through. Now, I had dealt and worked with people a little bit with it, but I find it very difficult to understand how people can really understand that if you haven't been through it. I have taken people out of water, I've done many, many different things with it, but it's very, very different when it hits your own doorstep or comes to you. So I found myself there. People will, well, why do you not talk to a member of your own family or that? Yes, that's brilliant if you can do it, but I think that's one of the hardest things that anybody can do. I think it's probably easier for people sometimes if you can talk to a friend, but if you were the friend that somebody talks to, there has to be great trust and great bond there, because there has been, you might build yourself up for weeks and weeks wanting to talk to that friend, and when you actually do that, you will find a weight lifting off your shoulder, but you mightn't actually talk about the problem you went with at all, but you have took that first step and went to see somebody. So I went through all that, and we could talk and talk and talk and talk on it. But it's one of the most horrible and worst situations anybody could ever find themselves in. And I suppose we often talk about the person with the problem, but we don't very often talk about the family that have to live with the person with the problem. A completely different thing again. And that's very, very seldom discussed.
And George, nowadays, you work tirelessly as an advocate to support people who are currently going through what you went through and have come through. Just to finish off, tell me a little bit about that work.
Yes, well, I suppose that actually started off with me. I started doing talks on farm safety and general health, particularly for men to go and get a checkup done every year. And I started doing that in the National Clown Championships, thanks to Anna May McHugh for facilitating me there. And I had done that for a number of years. Now, I'd done that same thing the year that I was in the depths of despair, and still nobody knew. I could get up there in public and do that in the depths of despair myself and couldn't talk about the problem. So the following couple of years after, when I had got through that long, dark tunnel, I actually started talking about mental well-being. And I don't talk about other people in public. I just spoke about my own experiences with mental health, and I started doing that there. And that's where this whole thing kicked off from then. We formed an organisation in Wexford here, which is nationwide, a small little group, totally voluntary, of awareness head to toe. So that's where we started off. We're an organisation to do a little bit on farm safety, general health, and mental well-being. So that's where we come from. We're there. We might not solve all problems for people, but certainly we will find somebody that will help you and will support you if we can't do it. So that's where we come from. We regularly get phone calls. I've got phone calls in the middle of the night, along with the middle of the day. I mean, in my own setup, I experienced the first glimmer of light, and I'm going backtracking a little bit. I was on Friday evening supposed to ring my GP at 3 o'clock. Instead of ringing him, I went in there driving. I probably shouldn't have been driving. I remember there was one person in front of me in the surgery, and the doctor came out, who I known quite well, and they put his hand on my shoulder, and they happened to say to me, "Do you think you can get through with things till Monday morning?" And I said, "I don't know." Well, I said, "The reason I'm asking you, I've been on to people in Dublin that deal with people that are suicidal, but they are not available until 10:30 on Monday morning, and I'm prepared to give a room at the surgery here if you would come. But I can assure you, mental health problems don't stop at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon and recommence at 10:30 of a Monday morning. But if I was to ever give a glimmer of light," I remember that doctor come back to me then, and he said to me, "I know you for a long time. If anything happened to you, it'd break my heart." So I actually never forgotten that. But we continue to work. We support people. Talking is one thing, but listening sometimes can be more important. I've had people from all walks of life on to me from all over Ireland and outside of Ireland. I've done talks on in New Zealand, Norway, different places, to give that hope, give that support, and to trust the people. I mean, I've met people in all types of situations. I've dealt with people from all ages, from very, very young age up to people in their late 80s. So that's why I stress it can happen to anybody from any life at any time. Try and look for help, talk to somebody. There is help there. There may be not enough, but it's a massive problem and it's not going away. And I think our young people are great. Sometimes we may talk about students in school, national school and college and that coming home. But remember, they can be brilliant as well. They may have problems, but sometimes they're coming home to a parent or a guardian that has the problem, a completely different thing. So it's a minefield. It's just massive, and it is certainly not going away. We may be talking about it more, but there's a lot of pressure. Right. It's not going away. The three, I mentioned one brief thing. The three most important things in life, plus one: be safe, peace of mind, and your health. And remember the fourth. The most important gift you can give anybody is your time.
Well, that is a really wonderful note on which to end our conversation for the moment, George. My apologies, I think I may have given the wrong name at the beginning. It is, of course, George Graham. And George will be coming back to you again in a couple of minutes. And thank you so much for that. Hugely inspirational. I'm sure anybody that's watching this evening that's feeling under the weather will be so inspired by your story. You've given such hope that it is possible to come through the tunnel of darkness and out the other end. And thank you so much, George, for that. My next guest is Breda Gardner from County Kilkenny. Breda is a registered nurse, and nowadays she works as a complementary therapist. She's written a number of books, and her most recent book is going to be published on the 1st of December. It's Kind Words to Help You Heal. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on Centre Ground, Breda.
Oh, thank you, Anna. I'm humbled and heartfelt sympathies to Jackie. Listening to George as well, fair play, you know. Listen to them. Both speak, well done. It's humbling.
Breda, maybe you might begin by telling us a little bit about your own difficulties that you had with your mental health when you were younger.
Well, Anna, I trained as a nurse in Jervis Street in Dublin, and I went with 5 of my friends over to America, and we were nursing over there, came back. I went overseas to Scotland to study my midwifery, and I discovered I found terrible anxiety. In other words, my heart was beating so fast I couldn't sleep at night. And my mind, like what George was saying, was racing and racing. And it was like as if, you know, the monkey mind was jumping. Symptoms with insomnia, not being able to sleep, and trying to study was very difficult. And I wasn't enjoying my course. And as a result, everything just collapsed within me. I had no motivation, found it difficult to get up in the morning. I couldn't think clearly. And eventually, as like a step in the right direction was telling my family, because I found it very difficult to share. When you're in a negative, you don't want, well, I find anyway, I don't want to share any negativity. And so my first step was to speak to my family and tell them about, I'm not enjoying this course, and I'm really in a bad place. So they came over to Scotland, and I went back home, and I went to see a doctor. And of course, you know, the doctor said to me, well, you look great. And I said, looks are very deceptive. Even though you may look great, what matters most is what you feel inside. And I just feel well, I can't stop my racing mind. Thoughts are self-destructive. I don't want to leave the house. I can't get out of the bed. And, you know, eventually I was put on antidepressants. which I have to say were a lifeline to me because they altered the chemical imbalance that I had inside me. And I eventually went back to nursing in Galway. And then I found that after being on the medication for a year to year and a half, the medicines then had terrible side effects. And I began to have, like, you know, systemic headaches, and they were MAOIs, and you couldn't eat certain food. And I suppose I used to get very high blood pressure and felt that my head was going to explode. So I went back to the psychiatrist and I said to him, I have to come off these medicines because they're not suiting me. And I felt when you're depressed, you're very, but also you have the medication was actually making me feel numb, not have any emotion. And I just I couldn't feel anything. So if something was sad, I couldn't cry. Or if it was something happy, I couldn't be happy. It was like as if I was stifled. So I said to the psychiatrist, I have to come off the medicine because they're just not suiting me. But I knew that I couldn't just come off because I needed something to replace. And like what George was saying, sometimes you have no etiology for your depression. Now, in my family, I had an aunt and an uncle who went into a psychiatric hospital and came out, you know, never came out of the hospital. They died young in hospital. And I suppose in my case, I started studying and researching and wondering, why does one get depressed? Why do I feel like, why do I not love myself? Why is it that if you're having all these self-destructive thoughts that are bringing me down, I wanted to know, what can I do to make myself feel better? So I was up in Eason's in Dublin, and literally a book fell off the shelf, and it was a book by a Dr. Wayne Dyer, and it was called Your Erroneous Zones. And it explained everything about understanding your emotions within your body, and how we have positive emotions and negative emotions, and how we can balance our emotions, and how to change our own energy within one's body. So 35 years ago, I started scripting and writing. And I started writing positive affirmations because at the time I didn't love myself. In fact, I hated myself. I couldn't look in the mirror. I didn't, everything was wrong about me, which was the inner critic was so self-destructive that you think the world would be a better place without you. So I started scripting and writing, and 35 years on, you know, I'm still writing positive affirmations, and I'm still working on my energy and understanding, I suppose, that understanding to know oneself is the greatest gift. It's to know that your mind, we have a mind and a body and a spirit, and once they're all connected, and in other words, our spirit is our purpose, or our spirit may be purpose, as the Dalai Lama said, the purpose in life. So how can one do that? So I studied a range of therapy, starting with exercise to music, to aromatherapy, to nutrition, to iridology, diagnostic kinesiology, and homeopathic medicine. So I studied those in London for about 7 years, and journey has brought me to where I am here in the Southeast, and meeting lots of people with depression or with self-destructive thoughts, or, you know, health ailments, whatever it may be. And I suppose, you know, I feel honored to be able to help people to look at their maintaining cause through a technique called and through what is the maintaining cause as to why the body goes out of balance, you know, be it electromagnetic stress or geopathic or nutrition or allergies or whatever. So it's just a technique that I use and you're just asking the person with the use of their arm, and especially with depression, if they are negative and they're self-destructive, I just place my hand over their head and their arm always goes down weak.
Right.
Change their thoughts and their vibration, and their arm can go strong. So it's, I suppose, teaching people to how to, heal themselves in ways that they have the power within themselves to be able to change their own energy and feel better in different ways.
Breda, for anybody that's watching tonight whose mood is quite low, what can they do immediately to try and lift their mood?
The first thing I would say to the person is become aware of what's going on up here in the mind. Because if you're thinking negative, they are not you. They are not become cover of your thoughts and look in, and like as if you're decluttering your computer, press the file to declutter the negative thinking. Now, how can you do that? For some people it's not easy because they can't meditate, because they can't be, they're too anxious and they're too jittery and they're too restless and they have to be moving. So for those people, I'll say, put on your coat, go out for a walk in nature. If you like dancing, dance, put on your favorite music, but divert your attention away from the negativity. And that is not the real you. Even just a simple technique, breathing in and breathing out the negative. Just breathe out the negative thoughts that's going on in your head. Sorry. It's just people, that we are energy. Every cell is energy based. Even just a little technique of pressing your forehead here. I'm pressing my thumbs against the side of my forehead. I'm putting my 4 fingers on my forehead. Even just pressing there for 1 minute and taking a deep breath will allow you to detach from the drama that's going on inside in your head. Because when you have self-destructive thoughts, your energy is stuck. It's like a tree that has no roots. It becomes ungrounded. So we need to create those roots again to get the energy moving, like the figure of 8, the infinity sign. Even as I put my hands up over my head and move my energy, that is a grounding technique. So become aware, box the negative, start writing if you have to. Even if the negative is so bad, write it out. Write out all the negative, all the crap that's going on in your head, write it out, burn it. See it go down the sink. Let the negative go. Let it go. Put your coat on. Go move the body, because the thing about it is, it's to get out of your head and put yourself back into your body. The journey of life is the journey from the head to the heart. If we can get into our heart, that's where we feel. That's where we feel, and we want to feel better with our emotions.
Okay, thank you so much
emotions
for that, Breda. Hugely enlightening. If anybody wants to contact you or to buy your new book, how can they do so?
Well, my email is number eight, the infinity sign, 8kindwords@gmail.com. So if anybody wants to email me, and I'll get back to them that way. And the book is available on Amazon or Kindle.
Okay. Thank you
today, so.
Thank you so much, Breda, for that. I'm really looking forward actually to reading your book. And now to the final part of our programme. Dr. Peter Dunne has been waiting there patiently. Thank you for joining us tonight again, Peter.
Thank you very much, Anna. And once again, a big shout out to say thank you to Stephen as well.
Yes.
As always, and I know we deal with controversial and sometimes emotional issues. And I suppose I just want to preface anything I might say by saying that I hope I deal with this. It's a very traumatic subject in what will be, I hope, a sensitive and sensible manner. So obviously some harrowing stories there. And I suppose to really cut to the chase, I suppose really as this year draws to a close, and we look forward to some sort of a Christmas celebration in those dark days of winter after a torrid psychological year for all of us as we've gone through the COVID crisis. I suppose we must address what some might call the collateral damage of the various non-pharmaceutical countermeasures that were deployed this year, and particularly the lockdowns, and which may very well prove to be counterproductive when the death toll from suicides and also from missed medical diagnoses is revealed in time and in due course. And I suppose COVID-19 has enveloped all aspects of our life this year. And really, I suppose the issue of suicidality and mental health really has come to the fore. And there are many ways in which it can do that. And I was just wondering about the incidence of domestic violence that has reportedly increased. And perhaps for a moment then, maybe just let's pause to think of some of the people who may be trapped in abusive relationships, and maybe some of these unfortunate people may see suicide as their only escape route. We cannot be sure. And strangely, in a week where the former wife of the musical legend Don McLean told her story of being trapped in an unhappy marriage for I think almost 30 years with coercive control. Is this an issue which has increased under COVID-19 restrictions? And might that be partly responsible for, let's say, putative increased rates of suicide, which again, we can only speculate about at the moment? And that brings me to, without further ado, this week's hot topic question. And that question is, given that the breakdown of mortality statistics for this year may not be available until sometime at some stage in 2021, to what extent do the panel, do our guests think that the government's response to COVID-19 may have driven up the incidence of suicide?
Okay, thank you for that question, Peter. And maybe I'll come to Jackie first. Jackie, do you think that being in lockdown could have a detrimental effect on people's mental health?
Yeah, 100% I do. It's the people that haven't seen their family in so long, or they can't get out the way they used to do. It's the older people that used to be able to go to their clubs. It's the only social activity that they had with people, that they wouldn't be allowed to do that now. And it's the isolation, it's the loneliness that would affect a lot of people's mental health. But I also think, and I don't know if everyone would agree with this, I think the likes of the gyms, I think are so important for people's mental health as well, where some people only have the gym to go out and release a lot of stress or anxiety, and it's unfortunate that gyms would have to close. But yeah, I do think it's a hard thing. Obviously, we have to lock down. We have to try and get the numbers down. And I don't know if the government is right or wrong in the way they're doing it, but it is definitely affecting an awful lot of people. And mental health is going to hugely increase it in people's minds if this continues the way it is.
Right. Thank you for that, Jackie. George, you very much in tune with what's happening in the farming community. And I know that the rate of suicide is quite high among farmers. Do you think that lockdown is having an adverse effect on people's mental health?
Yes, without doubt, I think it is. And that's certainly at the moment. But my feeling is, from the mental health point of view, and it's not giving me any satisfaction to have to say this, but I think we haven't seen the worst of it at all. The worst is still to come from that side. And I think we're going to see it for a long, long time to come, unfortunately. That's not something I want to be saying, but that's my particular feeling. When you look at everything, there's things that's happening, and unfortunately things that's not happening now, that's certainly going to affect people down the road for a long, long time to come. We're in something that we've never been in before. We're certainly not in our time. It's new to everybody, and it's going to have major consequences. Things that people would be doing this time of the year for the last couple of months, just looking, for instance, for pantomimes, drama, just a couple of very simple things to be doing, just can't happen. The effects that's going to have on the people, then people are not involved with anything maybe for the next year. And we don't know what. It's going to have a massive effect on themselves and on their families. So certainly, unfortunately, I think we haven't seen the worst of it from the mental health side. And
George, I know that you have been helping people who have mental health difficulties for the last couple of years. You know, are you seeing more people coming to you looking for help?
Yes, actually in the past week, I've been outdated with calls, but I've also spoke to a number of counselors, psychiatrists during the past week, and every single one of them have told me the same thing. Since they started their career, they have never, ever been as busy. Like, I've had phone calls regularly on a daily basis because I don't work out of an office. I'm not professional in one way in what I do, but what is professional, I get calls all hours of the night or morning as well. I don't know if it's just okay with you. What I would like to do as well, I don't just believe in talking here. If I can't give out my contact, if people do want to talk to me, they can actually contact me, if that's okay with you.
Yes, of course, go ahead.
Yeah, I just firstly like to mention Awareness Head to Toe. You can Google there www.awarenessheadtotoe.ie, and my own number is George Graham on 087 2569 072. I mightn't answer every call, but I certainly will get back to you. And the reason I am, because I think there's a lot bigger problems down the road for us, and that's not what we would like to be saying. Now, look for help. We can have all the psychologists, all the counsellors, either out in rural Ireland or in a town of one side of the street or in a house up the road, whichever. They are not going to come to you. That's the nature of the thing. You have to go to them. And this is what we're living with. And that's why we have to try educate the people. We have to educate and educate and educate. And I do find young people, in fairness, very, very good. After talking in universities, colleges, and even national schools, I find young people extremely good if they could get the help and the support that they need there, and we can help them through this. But it can happen to anybody, as I've said, from any walk of life at any time.
Okay, thanks for that, George. And Breda, do you think that lockdown is having an adverse effect on people's mental health that could possibly lead them to that terrible place where they might actually have suicidal ideation?
I do, yes, sadly I do, because there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of anxiety, and it's not just, it's collective as well. And there's a lot of negative media out there, a lot of bad news. So some people are very, very sensitive, and they watch. It goes right into their subconscious, and it comes out then in how they feel. But I just want to say too, Anna, that there are some wonderful causes, some wonderful groups out there, like what Jackie was saying with the rugs. We have an organisation, Chop Tom. We have Pieta House. You've got the Samaritans. You've got Mental Health Ireland. You've got all these different organisations, and like, you know, George offering his services, and the psychologists and the psychotherapists, etc., etc. And I do agree with Jackie with what she's saying. It would be lovely if the gyms were left open, because there are some people who live on their own, and their outlet would have been to the gym as a social gathering, and that's gone. So, you know, I just say, get out, go put on your gear and get out in nature, go to the park, do that little bit of exercise. And I would love to see the government, combined with the Department of Education and the HSE, if there was something that could be brought into schools from the age of 7, like a subject, understanding oneself and understanding your emotions. In other words, it's like understanding that when you do go out of balance, or when you have situations that is outside your control, that's outside you, that you work on your own inner self so that you can keep yourself strong in the midst even of a stressful situation. So I would love to be taught in the schools, understanding emotions, understanding energy, and what we're made up, understanding our mind, understanding our body and our spirit, so that we have the power within ourselves maybe to alter and change. It's so important.
Okay, and back to you, Peter. Perhaps you might like now to bring together, as you always do, the various thoughts that have been running through our program for tonight.
No, absolutely, Anna. And again, I'm amazed. Some very prescient and very wise words there from all our guests. And I suppose if I can try to maybe tie it all together, I think we, as George has alluded to, I think sadly, I think there will be what I might call lag effects on mental health, and as well as all of the other indices of health with misdiagnoses and so on and so forth. I mean, and only this week, in fact, there was a very prescient article written in the Irish Examiner by Dr. Niamh Lynch on the effect of stress and anxiety related to COVID on children, and how that's likely to probably have lasting effects on their psychology. And I think psychology it's hugely important in all aspects of our life, and the vagaries and the mysteries of the human mind, which I think are, much as we like to think we live in a very technologically advanced civilization, I suppose really when push comes to shove, to use a cliche, we really, I don't think, understand what we call psychology nearly as well as we need to. And to not to be glib, but it's very difficult, I think, to understand what is going on in somebody else's mind unless you've actually gone through a similar situation yourself. And I mean, we again, coming back to the much mooted actually Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and I suppose what some people call the techno-utopianist view of the world, which sees our technology as our future, and an increased reliance on technology and an increased focus on technology, and it almost denies our implicitly spiritual existence and that dimension of our being. And I think we're definitely missing a beat in that sense, and I think we still have a lot to learn on that sense. And I think we need to get back to nature. And in fact, I also came across, just bearing in mind what we're discussing, I came across a very interesting article which posited that children who grow up away from cities and away from urban environments and closer to nature actually are much psychologically stronger, and that effect pertains through life. And I'm also minded of the phenomenon, and maybe some of our panelists and maybe some of our viewers have heard of it, of that forest bathing, which is extremely popular in Japan. And again, what that harkens to, I think, is our implicit connection to nature, which we need to stay, I think, psychologically strong and resilient. And I think all of these things are probably being a little bit glossed over. And also, again, if I can go back just briefly to lockdown, and to beat that drum again, one of the harms, I think, that is emerging from lockdown is this, apart from quasi imprisonment and I suppose separation from loved ones and family, especially at this time of year. It's also the separation from all aspects of our surroundings and nature, and just being in, as Breda has said, being in nature and being in nature and being with people. All of these things are critically important. And just if I can finish off by saying, it's often said that some people take the view that courage is the supreme human virtue. Well, I think, the wiser view, I think, is to say that kindness is actually the supreme human virtue. And, if anything, be kind.
And I suppose that is a lovely note on which to finish, and bearing in mind that Breda's book, which is going to be launched on the 1st of December, is Kind Words to Help You Heal. To those of you at home who have been watching, I want to thank you. I suppose the message that has come across tonight is that if you're feeling low, reach out to somebody. That is the most important thing. There is help available, and I suppose it's just being brave enough to take that first step to reach out. I want to thank each of my guests sincerely. I'd like to thank Jackie Fox, who shared her story about her daughter Nicole, and a hugely harrowing story, but light at the end of the tunnel. She has successfully campaigned to get the law changed so that online bullying will now be a crime. George Graham from County Wexford, who shared his story about his lifelong struggle with his mental health, and who is now a wonderful advocate, reaching out and helping people who are going through what he himself went through. And Breda Gardner, who also shared her own personal story of her struggles with her mental health, and nowadays is working as a complementary therapist, helping people find joy in their lives. I want to thank all three of you. I want to thank Dr. Peter Dunne, who, as always, has done a wonderful job on chairing our panel discussion. And finally, a big thanks to Stephen Kerr and his team at the Irish Inquiry, who have made this live stream possible. So until we meet again next Wednesday night, live at 8 p.m. Bannock Day Arif Gulair. Iowa.